In 1977, New York City had a huge blackout. July 13th, New York fell into darkness, and darkness in itself is not a problem, but when everything went dark, when there was no light, when people couldn't see, the city became chaotic and people lost their way. 1,616 stores were looted, 1,037 fires were started, 3,776 people were arrested. It was a night of confusion and chaos and riots and mayhem and violence, and it wasn't humanity's finest hour. It seems as people, we don't make the best decisions in the dark. In the absence of light, people lose their way. Psalm 119 verse 105 says this, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." And we are walkers through a world that's shrouded in darkness. Not always in a physical darkness, a different kind of darkness. 150 years ago, a person wouldn't venture outside at night without a lantern so they wouldn't fall or trip over something they couldn't see. And it's a really basic principle that you need light to see where you're going. But for such a basic principle, I'm surprised how many people can run through life in a state of blindness. They can be blind to their purpose, blind to God's ideal, blind to the opportunity for goodness around them, blind for the right path for their life, blind to their full potential. And so we can spend all of our time in a cycle of stumbling over things and then recovering, stumbling through a bad relationship and then emotionally recovering, stumbling through bad financial management and then monetarily recovering, stumbling through offense and then relationally recovering. We can be like the people wandering in the dark, tripping over things that we can't see, and that's not God's plan. It's not God's intention for us to walk from pain to pain, but rather from purpose to purpose. Not going from stumble to stumble, but instead from glory to glory. The Bible, the Word of God, can be a lamp to our feet. We've all gotten up in the middle of the night and kicked our toe on the chair in the dark, or been walking outside and tripped over something that we couldn't see in the dark. Even a small amount of light allows us to avoid obvious obstacles. Yet we face things in our world every day that trip us up, that slow us down, that cause us pain. We see people fall into addiction, into a state of people-pleasing. We can find ourselves afraid of things that didn't used to intimidate us. We don't see these things coming. We can be blind to the obstacles in our life, but our God didn't leave us stranded in the darkness. He gave us a light, and we have a lamp that illuminates our next step right at our fingertips. It's the Word of God, a lamp to our feet. It reveals our next step in our journey. It shows us where it's safe to put our feet next. It illuminates the things that want to trip us up and take us out. Our lives will be stumble after stumble if we live in the dark, but we have this blazing, illuminating torch ready to be used. The Word of God, a source of wisdom, a source of truth and transformative power that can be used to light our way and guide our steps. But a torch in your pocket is of no help at all. It's the torch that's taken out, the torch that's used, the torch that's shone into your world, revealing the things hidden in darkness, revealing pathways of potential and God-given treasure. That's the torch that makes a difference. The Word of God needs to be used, it needs to be read and known and loved. It's your everyday companion. It's the source of your daily clarity. And when darkness settles down around us, the Word of God, like a flaming torch, casts away the darkness and confusion. It reveals the path, and while it may not shine all the way to the end, it will illuminate your next step. That's the promise of God. And we can take this analogy a step further, because Psalms 119 not only says that the Word of God is like a lamp to our feet, that it guides our next step in our day-to-day, but it also says it's a light to our path, which means it illuminates our direction. You see, in the New York blackout, people made decisions and took pathways they wouldn't have usually taken. They weren't usually rioters, they weren't usually violent, they weren't usually arsonists, but darkness has a way of distorting the paths that we should take. And when one path is inherently evil and one path is obviously opportunistic, the path that we should take is obvious. But when one path and another path look exactly the same, our day-to-day decisions, what coffee should we have? What job should we apply for? Should I date this person? Which church should I go to? When the decisions are neither more evil or good than the other, how do we decide which path to take? We make decisions for our relationships that affect us emotionally, or we can choose a path for our business that affects us financially. Some people can become so paralyzed with indecision when they see so many different pathways in front of them, and by their own earthly understanding, neither of them look either better or worse than the other. And so we need something to illuminate or to give light to our steps. The Word of God shines a spotlight on the path that you should take. And I know this from experience that the right decision, or more so the wise decision, becomes infinitely more clear as I spend more time looking at and dwelling on the instructions and stories and wisdom of the Bible. It lights my way like a big neon sign. And the Word of God is to be consulted repetitively. It transforms our minds to be ingrained in our heart. It's to be the very foundation of our decision-making framework, because it alone has the illuminating property of helping you decide your best path. And if we could see all the way to the end, we'd know what path to take and how to navigate our own lives well. But we can't. All we have is the next step. And we need the illuminating, inspiring, revealing Word of God to guide us as we go. So we take this lamp, we take this light, and we take the Word of God and we apply it to our lives. We see Jesus in it, and then by that we see ourselves as we should be. It's our divine clarity, our lighthouse, our map. But then Jesus says that the light that guides us is not just to stay contained in us. Matthew 5 then says that we are to be a light to the world. The clarity, the wisdom of your walk, the paths you choose, pave the way for others to step into their destiny. You are a pioneer. And when you take a step or path that leads to joy or peace, people follow you and experience the same thing because of your decisions. And when you take a step or a path that leads to freedom and life, people see that and follow what you've done. By allowing the Word of God to saturate your heart and saturate your head, you light up your world, leading to the illumination of society around you. A greater future awaits those who switch on the light of the Word of God in their lives. When we look at the Word of God, we don't just read a book that is to be studied. When we look at the Word of God, Jesus is revealed. Jesus is the Word. And when He is revealed, who we are is revealed in the grand scheme of God's design. When we look at the Word of God, the world around us is illuminated. C.S. Lewis said it like this: I believe in Christianity like I believe the sun has risen. Not only because I see the sun, but because by it, I see everything else.